So let's start. This webinar deals with the training on the health and safety and risk management involved in the research project. We are going to learn something about the aspects for the health and safety management during a new research project where we can find new product, new material, and we need to handle them, we need to manage them, storage, and so on. So specific health and safety warning, let's say, particular attention have to be put in act just to assure that the workers has no problem with this activity with these new materials. So starting with a very simple agenda, just a brief presentation of my company, who we are, what we do, and our involvement in the BIOnTop project, even if many partners are present in this training activity, but some others are external. So that I'd like to present our activities. We just describe with particular attention what the health and safety regulation provide us for the guarantee of the compliance of the specific risks, especially for chemical risk today, but we will, let's say, discuss also for other risks in the next times, if we have enough time for all, let's say, the risks. We can perform a particular risk assessment, as I said, in terms of the chemical risk, and then we deal with the REACH and CLP regulation, which are, let's say, our guidelines for the classification, labeling, and packaging of new material, but also standard material, benchmark, and what we have already on the market. And also for the material safety data sheets of the material, which is an important document that we need to have with us before handling specific substances. Surely the next time, the next week, when we have the second webinar for this activity, we will discuss about the safety for the end users, especially for the food contact regulation and definition, especially for the packaging in contact with the food, what we have to verify, what we have to comply with. So starting with my company's description, ARCHA, which is the acronym of Analysis and Research of Applied Chemistry, was born in Pisa in 1989. And the first, let's say, activity was the Chemical and Biological Laboratory for the analysis, since we are also accredited with 17025, that is the, let's say, recognition of the lab in terms of the rightness of the analysis and results from the laboratory. Then we have also the research area, where we perform research projects, both national but also European level. And we have a consulting services that provides the regulatory compliance on environments, health and safety in workplaces, implementation of the quality, environmental, and safety systems, especially according to the main standards that we can have for these aspects. We have also the training area, where we perform training courses, especially for the health and safety aspects. This is something like this one. We have also the ICT area, with the development of several softwares, in particular for the management of the laboratory, and the industrialization area, where we can develop and produce the new products coming from research project. As I said, ARCHA is accredited laboratory for the 17025. We are also recognized by the Italian Ministry of Research as a research center. We are recognized for the ZDHC, that is the zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, especially for the field of tanning, textile, and footwear sectors. And we are recognized by TÜV Austria for all the biodegradability and compostability protocols on plastics and packaging materials. Mainly, we are also certified according to quality compliance, environmental and safety compliance, and as a training agency, laboratory for analysis of drugs and for ACCP. We have many equipment and instruments for the analysis of all the matrices that you can find in the table. We can analyze wastewater, waste, solids, food, and so on. So all the, let's say, parameters and analysis to detect pollutants, but also for the quality, to certify the compliance with the specific regulations. In BIOnTop project, we are involved, especially for this part of the health and safety assessment, trying to analyze and verify that the packaging that are produced in specific work packages within the project are compliant with the regulation for the food contact. So we verify especially for the flexible and rigid packaging, but also for the nets and textile products. And in addition, we need to verify the compliance with the REACH and CLP regulation, that we are going to see what they are, what they say to us, by verifying also and especially the specific hazardous characteristics that this material could have, if any, and then to provide the safety of these packaging materials. So starting for the health and safety regulations. As I said, As I said, the health and safety regulation is one of the main areas that the European Union has had for, let's say, to face of specific risks, a great number of risks, with the minimum number of regulations. The European Union has defined that the workers have the right to a high level of protection of their health and safety at work. So this means that we need to verify this regulation. We need to verify the compliance with these regulations, and in particular to guarantee that the workers have to, let's say, stay at work in the safest way as possible. So thanks to this, in particular for the European Pillar of Social Rights that states 20 principles, Pillar number 10 on the health and safety defines that all workers have the right to be protected at work. Workplaces should be safe and healthy for everyone, and personal information must stay private. So this means that all the different kind of workers need to be protected by the health and safety regulation. Starting from, let's say, the bottom of the slide to the top, from 2002, we have several changes in the regulation for the health and safety aspects at the European level. So mainly an improvement of all these directives and regulations has become during the years. And now we have defined the, and we have enforced the strategic framework on the health and safety at work from 2021 till 2027. Even if several regulations can be updated for specific risks, for specific assessment of risks during this year. So before this framework directive, we had the directive 89391 that was the occupational safety and health directive that established that member states are allowed to maintain or establish more stringent measures than the one included in the framework directive. This means that we can refer to the European regulation, even if we can have, and we have to check for each member state, if any specific and more detailed and national regulation is enforced for each member state. This is important to take into account since we have to, let's say, stay updated about these directives. Even if we can have several, let's say, warning about a directive, if it is not more in force, if it has been updated during the years and so on. But we have to pay attention about this for each specific member state. This is important. For example, in Italy, we have the legislative decree 81 that is, let's say, updated very often, and so we need to stay updated about this. These are the list of the specific directives that are, let's say, noted in the framework directive for each specific risks in workplaces and at work. So starting from general ones, for example, for workplace requirements, for the work equipment, you can see the personal protective equipment. Since you can arrive in the bottom of the list with the specific risk for physical aspects, for example, vibration, noise, artificial optical radiation, electromagnetic fields. You can find also biological risk, chemical risk, and so on. So all these references can be checked, verified if they are in force in each member state, or if there are any updates or national regulation that you need to check for your country. So more or less, we, as we said, this legislation is updated every 5 years, and also the updated can deal with the specific risk that can arise during the period, for example, due to the technological and scientific developments. For example, in this last year for the COVID pandemic that we had 3 years ago and till, let's say, now. And they have to be considered during the process of and the, let's say, sorry, the effectiveness, just to verify the effectiveness of these regulations. So mainly, as I said, we need to verify and anticipate the changes that can have, for example, for the digital transition, just to provide, let's say, a reference, but also for for example, for the improving the prevention of work-related diseases and accidents, since the European Union wants to arrive to Vision Zero, which means that no more diseases or accidents need to happen in the workplaces. This is, let's say, a very strong aim, but we need to achieve as fast as possible. And the update can, let's say, be reached in the next coming year on several different aspects. Here you can find also the reference where you can have a look just to see what are the news for the next years. Just to start on what the health and safety regulations defines, that all the responsibility and duty is of the employer. This means that the employer needs to make appropriate arrangements and manage also the organization inside the company for the establishment of an occupational safety and health management system. There are several steps that need to be verified, need to be put in the field, and that can be used for the improvement of the occupational safety and health system within the company. Several aspects are, for example, starting from the policy, the internal policy of the company, the organization in terms of specific documentation, communication, training for the employee, and also for planning and implementation of the system, a further evaluation just to assess where we are as health and safety assessment, and also the action for the improvement. After this, as a circle, we can start again for the further improvement of the condition. This is an approach that in each quality management system, also for the environmental management system, are put in the field, so that we can, let's say, improve in the coming years, just to start and assess and act as we need for the improvement, to evaluate again. This circle is usually called plan, do, act, check circle, so that we can, let's say, evaluate and monitor further improvement of the conditions, also for the health and safety of the workers in the company. So mainly for the policy aspects, the important thing is that the employer needed to ask to the workers and their representative about the condition, a specific condition within the company in terms of health and safety. We need also an important workers' participation. This means that all the workers can be called to provide input, suggestions, and so on for the evaluation of the health and safety within the company. And also the workers need to be informed and trained. This is important aspects for the occupational safety and health framework, since this means that all workers are aware about their condition, what is needed for the, let's say, guarantee of the safe work condition. About the organizing of the activity, always the employer should have the overall responsibility for the protection of his workers. And he needs to provide the competence and training to all the workers. He needed to verify also the system documentation, and he needed to inform all the employees with the procedures, all the let's say requirement, the documentation that has to be put in common with all the workers, but also with the committee of the safety inside the company, and to monitor just day by day, which are the condition of the health and safety inside the company. This is very important. This means that the employer and his responsibility is for the organization and for all the monitoring inside the company in terms of the guarantee of the compliance of these aspects. Then we need to the employer needed to plan and implement the risk assessment. What does it mean? That this means that first of all we need to make a preliminary analysis of the risk inside the company. The employer needed to identify these risks at let's say time zero. Needed to verify with the measurement, with collection of information, with several activities, which are the main objectives of the occupational safety and health assessment inside the company. So these objectives need to be specific for the organization. It depends from the type of organization. They need to be consistent with the relevant national or European regulations. They need to be continually improved for the protection of the workers. They need to be realistic and achievable, since we need to verify their compliance, but also verify that the improvement and the objective of the improvement is can be achievable. And also they need, this is important, the last point, periodically evaluated and, if necessary, updated. This is important since also for the research project, we can deal with a new activity, a new process, a new product, and we don't know, especially just thinking about new chemical products that we never handled before. And then we have a new product that we need to handle, and we need to assess if it has a specific risk, new risk for the safety, for the health and safety of the workers. So the updating of this activity for the health and safety assessment is very, very important. And in particular, for example, for researchers that are involved in a research project, they need to be, let's say, informed about this possibility that every research activity can be, let's say, a new risk for the company, and needed to be evaluated in advance, let's say, in a preliminary way, if it is possible, to understand what is the risk. And we can see later on about, for example, the collection of all the material safety data sheets that we can collect from the raw materials. Then we need to understand which are the, let's say, specific conditions for the working with these materials, and what can be produced, what can be, let's say, a new, let's say, product, or a new chemical substances that can come from this new process, just to assess if there is a new risk. Then in terms of the hazard prevention, for example, we can, well, better, we need to follow the hierarchy of the controls. And this in particular deals with, first of all, the elimination of the specific risk that we are going to have, or in the second phase for the substitution of the specific phase, and for, let's say, some engineering controls. That means, for example, use of specific measures, just to, let's say, also in this case, reduce the risk inside the company. We needed to evaluate also administrative controls, for example, change the way by turnover, for example, or something different, the people in contact with the specific risk. And lastly, to adopt a specific personal protection equipment to protect the workers that needed to be involved in this activity. But this is important just to start with some, let's say, most important activity, then pass to the other, just not to start with the last point. Usually many workers, but also employers, they find that it's enough to buy some PPE. And this is not true. So we need to go step by step with these experts. And it's important, this, let's say, approach, since we need to start with the most effective step, most effective approach for the reduction and the prevention of the risk. This is a starting point for all the organization to, let's say, to improve the risk assessment inside the company. And this is important for the prevention, especially in the research project. As I said, we are going to develop a new material. We need to assess if there is a specific risk that needed to be evaluated. And first of all, we have to assess how we can eliminate, substitute. Eliminate in this case means, for example, the elimination of, let's say, a solvent, which is very dangerous, and we need to substitute with another one who is less dangerous than the first. This is, for example, the possibility for a research project. Then for all the aspects, we need to manage the changes. So as soon as we are going to start a research project, just to make the same example and to understand for us which are the changes that we can face, we needed to evaluate the impact on the health and safety aspects. We needed to evaluate if we have to, let's say, appropriate preventive steps as for the step-by-step approach defined in the previous slide. And then we needed to assess if there are any important internal changes for this activity. Also, we needed to put in the training activity, for example, for the emergency prevention and also preparedness and response arrangements for the workers. And also the verification of the compliance with the safety and health requirements defined within the organization, with the national and European legislation, and so on. At this point, the evaluation has to be performed. So usually we need to perform the health and safety assessment on regular basis. For example, for the Italian regulation, we needed to perform the health and safety assessment every time within the company you have important changes. So, for example, a new equipment, new workers, new environmental conditions, which mean, for example, a new location of the company or some changes that are important for internal assessment. And also specific investigation, for example, if there are some work-related injuries, ill health, diseases, and accidents. These are important aspects that has to be considered and that can provide the need to perform a new evaluation of the health and safety within the company. Usually, we need also to perform periodic audits, since there could be something that is not under control. And so we need to verify if the occupational safety and health management is in place, is adequate, effective for the protection of the workers. And this is important to, that has to be done, especially, as I said, after several happenings that are, let's say, for example, illness or some accidents and so on. In this way, after this periodic audit, we needed to identify if there is action for the improvement. And so we need to identify and analyze the root causes of any non-conformities that can be assessed during this audit. We needed to initiate, plan, and implement the effectiveness and documenting the corrective and preventive action that has to are in place, need to be in place just to improve the health and safety assessment within the company. Also, when the evaluation of the health and safety system showed that the preventive or the protective measure for the hazard and the risk are not adequate or are coming inadequate, the measures should be addressed and performed according to the recognized hierarchy of prevention and control measures. So this is important just to, as I say, prevent any possible, let's say, more important problem. And we need also to check and to verify the continuous improvement of the health and safety conditions within the company. After this, we need to perform the risk assessment. So the risk assessment has to be done in a, let's say, documental way, since, for example, for several activities that are mostly, for example, in the office, we don't need to make any sampling activity, but especially for the research project, but also for companies which uses several chemicals, substances that can use several organic like food or something different. We need to assess if there is, for example, a chemical or a biological risk. And so we need to verify with the chemical measurement, biological measurement, the specific risks that can be in the company. So mainly starting from the identification of each specific hazard, we need to understand if there are any specific workers that are involved, if there are specific processes or substances that can provide, let's say, problem for the workers that can be, let's say, harmed by these specific risks. The evaluation of the risks is, let's say, has to be put in place, and we need to monitor, measure all the specific risks, and we need to document all the results. We need to record all the measurements to be, let's say, and to verify the compliance with the specific limits, the specific regulation. Finally, we need to review periodically all these assessments. First of all, if there are significant changes, but also if there are, if we need to make some improvements, and in all the situations that cannot guarantee that the health and safety assessment can be improved. Here I can provide you several sources for all the description of this, let's say, organizational procedure, of this step-by-step information and approach for the health and safety evaluation within a company, within also within a research project. We can also do the health and safety assessment for the specific research project, just to, first of all, identify the risks that can be present within the activity, and then make the evaluation, so make the assessment of the specific risk, and then to make also the improvement. since these are the main step that has to be performed for the health and safety evaluation. I have provided you also two YouTube videos, just for the description of several, let's say, very good companies that has performed all the health and safety assessment and verified the compliance, providing, for example, specific equipment to guarantee the safety of the workers. What about the risk assessment in a general way? Oh, sorry, the animation is not working properly. So we need to define the differences between danger, hazard, damage, and risk. Mainly, a danger is an intrinsic characteristics of an object, an operation, a situation that can produce a damage to health or to things. So we can say that a knife is a dangerous object, alcohol is a dangerous substance, but, sorry for the animation, it's not working properly. The damage is the consequence to the things, for example, or to people of an accidental and not wanted event. So the same danger can change into a different damage or risk, depending on mainly three different operating modes. For example, the equipment, the surrounding condition, the environmental conditions, or also the operational expertise. This is why the training activity, for example, for new workers is very important for the health and safety analysis within a company, or also to put in place all the protective equipment for specific environmental conditions that are not, let's say, safe for the workers. So from the danger or hazard, we pass to the damage and final to the risk. And the evaluation of the risk is made by a simple matrix that link the probability that an event can happen with the severity of the damage. So that in this way, we can evaluate all the risks in workplaces and for workers. Well, it is not so true, let me say, since many of the risks can use this formula. In other case, you can, let's say, only evaluate if the risk is present and the measures are adequate, not adequate, or appropriate, not appropriate, since we have not the possibility to apply this formula for several risks. And we are going to see, in particular, this fact. And then we have another, let's say, general definition that is important to take into account, since there is an important difference between safety and health. I don't want to ask to you, just to reflect a bit, to think about this different, if you can, within yourself, which is the aspect that can be that can affect the safety and the health. Mainly, the safety depends on the occurring of accidents, incidents, and so on. So something that is not, can be not, let's say, that we can not know if it can occur, let's say. On the contrary, the health depends on the exposure to physical, chemical, biological agents. So the effect can be detected after, let's say, 1 year, 10 years, and so on. So we cannot evaluate the effect as soon as possible, but depending from specific substances, agents, let's say more in general, we can say agents, we can have some, let's say, health problem. These two aspects, we usually say health and safety, health and safety. It seems that it is the same thing. No. Since these two topics are interconnected, surely, but need to be addressed with different tools. Since a problem that can happen for safety is not the same that can happen for the health. And this is very, very important, since we need to prevent both with different way, with different approaches. So for both these aspects, we need to start from the identification of the presence of a specific risk. Then we need to measure it and to evaluate. In particular, sorry, 1 second. The evaluation has to be done compared with the specific regulation for each specific risk. So in other words, what we need to provide is a vote, a score. With this score, we have, let's say, a judgment of the specific risk. And all these judgments depend from the risk that you are going to evaluate. So some risks are measurable. We can make a sampling activity and measurement and compare them with the specific limits from the regulations. Other risks are not measurable, and so we have no references. And we need to make, let's say, some assessment in a different way. In general, for the health and safety, that, and I say health and safety both, and it is important for this, we can assess the severity. All these tables, this picture, are saying more or less the same thing with different, let's say, scores. So the severity, as we saw before in the formula, that the risk was the probability, and the severity as a matrix. So the severity, the probability can have different, let's say, values, and you have to assess by matching them the results in terms of specific risk. On the website, you can find many, let's say, different pictures like this one. It's important that each company has to define its specific way to assess the risk. Can be like the first picture, the second, the third, as you prefer. But for this and for all the activities that are carried on within the company, the same approach has to be maintained, since this has to take into account which is the scope of the risk assessment. And so all these use this formula. So the probability and the severity. Let's say how the regulation define the quantification of the risks for the safety. So for the happening of an accident or also other, let's say, specific safety risks. As you can see, more or less all are defined by the matrix with the formula P per S, and then other are defined as appropriate, not appropriate. For example, for the signposting that you can have within the company just to alert about specific risks within, I don't know, some equipment or some specific rooms, if you have several chemical agents and so on, you can have the signposting, and you define if these are appropriate or not. In addition, for example, for fire risk, you can have 3 different levels, low, medium, or high, for example. These are the evaluation criteria for all the risks for safety. Now we have the risks for the health. And also here you can see that many of them have the application of the formula for the calculation of the matrix. For example, the chemical agents, the carcinogens, the asbestos, but also for several physical agents, and also for the biological one. Other risks are evaluated as appropriate or not appropriate, for example. And final specific risks, that, for example, for the pregnant workers or minors, we can use the evaluation criteria that are allowed or not allowed in a specific workplace.